a couple more people coming in, but what I'll do is we make a bit of a start. So obviously there are lots and lots of lovely faces that we know from Outer Limits, from the network. Hello to everybody, and hello to newcomers as well. Well, people I haven't seen, Lauren, who is here and administrates the project as well. She might recognize a few of you. And newcomers, wave for us, Lauren. Give us a wave, Lauren. So you were getting emails from Lauren and Will over the next few weeks. So just a little bit about Outer Limits. So it's nearly 5 years since I was appointed artistic director of the Queen's Theatre. And when I came, there wasn't a talent development program. And I was very keen, as somebody who'd been a freelancer for probably how many years, about 14 years myself, just knowing how difficult it was sort of brokering those relationships with regional theatres and particularly home theatres. So the directorship has obviously changed since my time, because I grew up in Colchester. And I do remember, and the Mercury Theatre was really important to me. It's one of the first theatres I went to. It's some of the first theatre I ever saw. I was probably about 17. I got really into drama at school. I'm not from a theatre going background, and I was very theatre hungry, and I saw everything that the Mercury did. And so the Mercury played a really, really significant role in my theatre upbringing and kind of knowledge and experience. And so obviously it was the theatre that I naturally turned to as I decided I wanted to be a professional. And the doors were very much closed, and they were closed for many, many years until much, much later on. I think it was only really about 3 years ago that I had my first show at the Mercury, and it was because it was a touring show that had come out of the Queen's Theatre. So I was really, really keen for people to have access to skill sharing and some of the resources that we have. And we're one of the least funded regional theatres in the UK of our scale. So we don't have huge resources for lots of the work that we do, but I wanted to use what resources that we had and to be able to offer that to local artists. So Lauren will have told you that we have rehearsal space, we have expertise in terms of marketing, in terms of funding applications. There are lots of possibilities to draw upon. We have performance space. We have scratch performances where you can try out work. We have our foyer stage, which is very much there for local artists to try out their work. So if you don't know much about the program, have a little look online or read back over Lauren's work. One other thing I wanted to do, I mean, the brilliant thing is over the years is that we've really built up an incredible network of, there's some pretty outstanding voices within the region. And it's been incredible to bring you all together. And I suppose during this period in the lockdown, it just felt like an ideal opportunity, because the social events that we have, it takes so much planning, and then also the availability of people to come to all of those social events as well, so that we can network and we can reflect on the work that we're making, within the region. And people travelling from across the region, from Southend or Ockington or East Ham or to Hornchurch is not the easiest thing to do. So it just felt like this was a brilliant way of coming together. So there are a number of things that we're going to do. I particularly wanted to give a platform to some of our brilliant talent in the region, because we have a really wealth of talent and a wealth of unique voices, and I felt that it would be really great to celebrate that talent and also to share some experience of making work in the region, because I know the reoccurring concerns and thoughts are often about funding, or often about space to make work, or often about being recognised, or often about content and subject matter, and particularly around audiences. So Sadie and Sarah, you came onto my you came onto my radar quite early on because you've been recommended to me when I took over the theatre, and it was a period when I was meeting lots and lots of artists from the area. There was just an open call out, and I met as many artists as I could. In fact, we've got another session coming up when I'm going to be meeting lots of new people, and I met you very, very, very early on. And so I've been following Old Trunk's work over the period. Now, we sent a whole load of monologues to you, which comes from your catalogue of work, because you've been together nearly 10 years. Is it 10 years next year that you've been a company?
It's 8 years at the moment, so 10 years won't be far off. So
8 years.
We're going to have a think about what we can do to market.
Celebrate.
And having seen, I mean, obviously I've seen Prom Kicker and I've seen Fran and Lenny, and looking at some of the other monologues as well. I mean, do read the full plays if you get hold of them, because they're absolutely cracking. I mean, obviously the work is very female-led. It's really strident, it's very dynamic. There's an urgency in the writing. There's a kind of force in the language and a force in the performance and in the content, and but with comedy right at its heart, which often seems like a way of accessing the inner lives of the characters, or bridging into the inner lives of the characters. And I suppose looking at all those monologues, what was really, really striking is that all the characters are outsiders, or on the fringes of the societal norms. Is that what you intended? Did you set out to do that?
No, I actually have never really thought about that. Have you, Mayhew? I mean, I think in some regard there are, obviously we always see the main characters as being not outsiders to us, but definitely with something that they're striving for, or trying to express or figure out. So in a way, that process for them makes them an outsider in some regard. But maybe with stuff like Pram Kicker and Bastard Children of Remington Steele and stuff like that, maybe they were outsiders because there are so many different characters, usually played by 2 or 4 of us. So if they're being played by all those people, then I'm guessing they can't all be on the inside. I don't know. I haven't really thought about it.
I've just, no, me neither. But
that's a really bad answer, isn't it? I don't know. Never really thought about it, Doug.
Sometimes we don't.
There is that thing of like we're not outside. Well, we are kind of outsiders. So I suppose, especially the first 2, the Remington Steele and the Secret Wife. Have you put Secret Wives of Andy Williams in? I don't know, maybe not. But they're about nuns and orphans, right? And
it's not particularly mainstream.
It's not mainstream.
No. What am I thinking? I don't know what I did.
So they weren't mainstream, but at the heart of it all, which was like when you read it, and this actually is for all of them, at the heart of it all is, yes, they kind of are sort of disparate characters and on the outside, but it's for all those characters in every play, they all have a coming together at the end, like they establish being okay in the place that they're at in that moment in time. So with each other. So they may still remain outsiders. Does that make sense? I don't know.
But often there's a struggle, and thinking about Pram Kicker, and Fran and Lenny actually, there's a struggle with being on the outside, and then they're kind of coming to terms with that place being central to who they are.
Yeah,
definitely with Lenny, in Fran and Lenny, I knew from before I started it that she would be one of life's permanent outsiders, and that nothing really would alter that really. But yeah, I suppose as well, writing as a female, there's always that inherent thing of feeling slightly on the outside anyway. So I guess that's kind of just there, whether you fully interrogate it as a company or not. That's always going to be a thing.
And so with all of that, with that in mind, I'm always interested about this, do you think with theatre makers, are you thinking about audiences when you're making the work? Are you thinking about particular audiences that you want to reach, make work for, affect?
Yeah. Sorry.
I think it has changed, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely changed.
It's I think before we definitely knew, when we started working together, which we'll come back to, I'm sure, I think we just pretty much wanted to tell a strong story, strong characters, but mainly make people laugh.
Yeah.
So I think our audiences were always the ones we knew, which were comedy-centric, local pub, you know, above the pub, people that we'd worked with before or just that moved in the similar circles. And it kind of went on from there, really. So our awareness of the audience has changed as we've changed, I think. And so
but you're in sort of just reflecting back on that, because you have quite unusual backgrounds, don't you? I mean, Sadie, you came through comedy, you came through the kind of comedy circuit, or you did some work on the comedy circuit, and Sarah, you have a dance background, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I started as a dancer. I mean, the acting was always a thing. I danced because I knew I could see the world and get my equity card. But I started off in a circus in Mexico and got cut into 10 pieces on a nightly basis 3 times at the weekend. And a duck turned into me. But yes, so I started there. And then I worked around the world, but I came back, I had a back injury. So I went back into the acting. I couldn't ever take my place at drama school because I didn't get a grant, so that was out of the question. So it was like, what do you do? Like, I'm quite old as well, so I'm going back in the day. What do you do? Like, there weren't schemes, there weren't anything like that. What do you do? And so the comedy circuit seemed to be the circuit that you could make stuff, sketches, bits, try stuff out. So that's kind of where I moved in, I guess.
And Sadie, how about you? What was your route into theatre?
The very potted version was I did a writing degree, having just annihilated every single play at my school, and we did theatre studies, and my teacher took us to see a lot of theatre because we were such a small group. So we had this really golden period of just being thrown in the deep end and going to see loads of stuff. So I knew I loved theatre and I knew I loved writing dialogue. Then skip forward, I did a writing degree, kind of coasted through, didn't really know what I was going to do. And then I started writing plays for a youth theatre, which was how I kind of got into writing plays again. And then the comedy thing happened and kind of took me off on a weird little detour. So I suppose my love for theatre was always the kind of the bedrock of it all, and comedy was this thing that I'd skirted around on top of that kind of helped the writing, because I don't think there's anything so great as to take your words onto a stage and try them out and see how they go, and be the person on the stage to get that response as well, because it kind of makes you a bit tough. It makes you learn where you're going to get laughs, and you know, learn the punctuation and movement of a piece and stuff like that.
And also, sorry babes, but also when we talked about audience earlier, comedy really gives you a massive understanding of how audiences work.
Yeah.
Okay.
Huge.
Yeah.
How they're responding, because you hear from them, because it's really palpable.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can read the room.
Okay.
You can read. Yeah. Even spacing, all of that, how it's laid out, everything like that. I mean, we are really, even when we've done stuff upstairs in the old pub down in Southend, if the chairs are laid out straight, we're like, Sadie will literally have a nervous breakdown and start pulling all the chairs in. So the layout for an audience is hugely important when we're making these. So that kind of goes into venues and all of that kind of thing. Just understanding that they will drift off and the energy you leave. So that gave us a really good grounding in that.
And so, I mean, so you're saying you wanted to write something strong and funny, which, you know, the work is, I mean, even the most recent work is strong and funny, but there's other stuff going on, isn't there? I mean, I'm not that so familiar with the earlier work, but certainly Pram Kicker is taking on something really quite difficult and quite controversial. That is not, you know, necessarily something that is being said. And then Fran and Lenny, equally, they're quite difficult, difficult experiences. You know, kind of the gender politics within it are really, really striking and very desperately upsetting. And so there's not, they are strong and funny, but you know, the undercurrent of them are what you're changing audiences, aren't you? I mean, you're really, we are different. We're certainly, I felt very different after, particularly around the female, you know, the pressure to have a child or not, or you know, you are, there's something very active in the work as well as just, you know, being strong and funny. So would you say that has developed over your 8 years as artists?
I think we've always, I think our first 2 plays were a similar sort of mix of comedy and then, you know, emotion and whatever. And because, you know, we did want to explore the people's stories, and then the moment you start exploring those characters, of course, it becomes real, and they're not just these sort of flat characters who just live these joyous lives. They are full-bodied and have had dreadful experiences happening to, you know, to them, like everyone. So I think we all, and also, you know, you're very aware that you've got to tell this story in 1 hour, because we've always worked to the festival sort of model. So everything kind of just gets put in and then weeded out as we work with it. But I think a massive thing of what we like doing, and that comes down to audience awareness, is we like to make the audience think that they are here with us, and then kind of punch them with something else. I like that effect, you know, where they feel like they've just fallen into a different play almost.
So something quite manipulative in the emotional journey that you take the audience on. So you're really thinking about them as well. So not just the kind of making them laugh or the humor, but that also an emotional, that there's a palpable emotional response as well.
Yeah, because I think, you know, it's not in a manipulative thing in terms of I want to shock them, because
no, it's a means to an end.
But I think there's definitely that thing of, what do I like when I go to the theatre? And you know, when your stomach just plummets and you're like, oh fuck, we've gone there.
Yeah,
I was not expecting that, and I think that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
And how do you? So that's, I mean, are there qualities that are shared across the work? How do you decide what to make? You know, in terms of, because the content is very varied. The narratives, and if you think, and also with Sadie with writing Stiletto Beach as well, if you take Pram Kicker, Fran and Lenny, and then Stiletto Beach, the content is incredibly varied. There's not, so how do you decide, how did you decide to make Pram Kicker? I
think the thing, like with Pram Kicker, we were in Edinburgh doing the 2 previous shows, Bastard Children and Secret Wives. And I think we knew we wanted to go in a different direction, didn't we? We were kind of like, we'd sort of made those shows, and Sadie, actually, there is a 3rd one that Sadie does actually have. It's not written, is it? But it was going to be a trilogy. Anyway, it's not. Because I think we suddenly went, do you know what? Although we love Bonkers Nuns and Orphans, we're not sure that this is, that we want to keep going with this kind of work. Because I think we just, and we sat down, I remember where we were in the Royal Dick with a friend of ours, Steve Lambert, who's brilliant, you should look him up. And we was talking with him, and we'd spoken a lot about children. I don't have kids, that's fine, that was my choice. But obviously we're spoken about, you know, that whole how people can be fucking so cruel. I mean, I've been told I'm selfish, I want holidays, I want nice clothes, and what an asshole I am, and you've got a womb, use it, all of that fucking bullshit. So that was my story. And then Sadie was like, but when do you choose? So that's where we kind of went, oh, hang on. I think this is the show we need. This is the show we need to make.
Yeah.
Very much draws on your own personal experience. Would you say Fran and Lenny draws on your own personal experience to a degree?
It's a lot more hidden, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of anger towards the experiences you're kind of made to have as a woman in Fran and Lenny. That is a lot less autobiographical than some of the stuff in Prom Kicker, but still very real.
So wildly different worlds, but actually a really, really strong connection between the two of them, because they're both about the female experience, aren't they?
Yeah, I think with Fran and Lenny, we definitely knew we wanted to explore punk as a means to looking at what happens when women are just free.
Yeah.
And not just by being free to, you know, behave a little wildly on a night out or whatever, but like properly overhaul their whole life. And that was quite fun. And then we realised it was coinciding with the 40th anniversary of punk. So that was kind of a fun thing for us to do. And we wanted to do a lot more with music as well with Fran and Lenny, and we just ran out of time and money to do it. And
well, there's another question. We'll come to that, definitely. How do you make the work? Do you write it? Is it all written before you go into rehearsal, or is it?
I mean, we have a conversation, don't we?
Okay. Mayhew, you're really tinny.
Yeah, everything just broke up. I'm very tinny.
So we were talking about how do you make the work? Does the writing come first?
Well, we have the conversations first, don't we? And then the idea buds, and then we know that it's going to work because we both get excited and messages start pinging backwards and forwards. It's like, oh my God, I saw this, and oh my God, I saw this, oh my God, this will happen. And then Sadie will kind of go away, and you know, I might get a message going, wench, the voices are talking to me. And then I kind of go, right, I'll leave you to it. Goodbye.
That sounds so fucking wild.
And then it's hilarious, babe. And then I don't know, then she goes off and does the magic, and then we come back and kind of read bits. It's never whole, is it? We journey.
Not usually. We kind of have a bit of a skeleton, don't we? Yeah. And then we'll read it, and then I'll go away and kind of fill it in. Yeah. It feels like there's like dusting off bones. It feels like there's stuff that already exists, and then certain patches of it where you need to keep going a bit deeper. But yeah,
but there's no director
throughout that process. I mean,
you're the directors, aren't you?
Yeah.
I mean, Sarah, you don't have, because you perform in the pieces as well, don't you?
Yeah. So I take the lead on quite a lot of then getting into the room, but you're with the writer, so it's like the lead is kind of there with you as well, so it's collaborative. Have I gone tinny again?
You're right, I can hear you. But have you ever had any other collaborators in the room? Because it is very tight between the two of you.
No.
We have people that we know will come in and listen and tell us if it's shit.
Who are they? Are they theatre people, or are they mates? Or both. They could be. You can have mates who are theatre people as well.
Our first two plays were four-handers.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
We worked with Charlie and Ed, who are amazing. So they were great in the early, during the first two plays. Their instincts are brilliant as actors, and that helps a lot in the redrafting.
Yeah.
And what about designers, lighting designers?
So that's us.
That's you. You do everything.
Yeah. So I think when we did the first two, we knew that we kind of know what spaces we're going to be going into. So for Bastard Children, we knew we were on quite a thrust in Edinburgh. So my partner made us ramps that we could come up and down. They made the trunk for us. Like literally, we pull in favours left, right, and centre. And also why there is only a trunk on the stage.
And you're thinking about that design as you're making the work.
Yeah.
You go, what do we need in the space?
Yeah.
Okay. And then once it's open, is there any, once you first put it in front of an audience, does it change after that? Are you rewriting, you're reworking?
Yeah.
Pram Kicker's last scene was written in Edinburgh and changed up in, I don't know, like the first 5 days. So we'd be doing the show, coming home going, and then rehearsing and trying something out and rewriting the end scene.
Yeah,
in the flat, and that had already done previews at Brighton and Latitude. So yeah, it definitely changes.
And
actually keep changing. I mean, Pram Kicker we've performed so many times now, and we still find new bits in it, and then or find bits where I'm just like, I can't even believe that's still in there. How have we not? But yeah,
that's brilliant. It's great. Can we talk about, because I know lots of people, here have spoken about supporting themselves as artists. So I just wonder, how did the company come into being? What happened? Yeah, I believe your mates, you became friends and then let's set up a company together. Is that, how did that happen?
Yeah. Pretty much.
But we always wanted to work together, didn't we?
We met on I'd had a cataclysmic breakdown teaching shortly after my dad died, left teaching, and then I got asked to help to stage manage a show at the Palace Theatre that Sarah was in, a Neil Simon play. And we didn't
can I ask, is that when it was producing? Was that back in its producing days? No.
Not like that old.
In 1972. But it was a show that you a company had put together in Southend.
Yeah.
Okay, carry on. Yeah, great. Sorry.
And then Sarah, I think, did you ask me to write something for your show reel or something?
Yeah.
And then we just kept meeting for a beer, but then never getting around to talking about doing the show reel stuff. So we became really, really close before we started working together, even though we said we would work together. And then I think Sarah just said, right, we need to do stuff together. And we started doing sketches. And that was it. And I was with a comedian at the time who started doing sketches with us, and we started doing a lot of stuff sort of together.
But can I ask where you did this? Was it in Southend or was it up in?
Mainly in Southend, and then I did a couple of Edinburgh shows with him.
Yeah.
We did Edinburgh, didn't we?
Yeah. So we did. It was a lot of comedy, but then that joyously came to an end, that relationship, and Sarah and I just carried on going, really, writing stuff together.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then it was lots of silly stuff. And then we got the idea for a sketch show called The Bastard Children of Remington Steele. Went away and plotted it. And then we loved it so much, and it felt like such a idea full of things that it turned into a play instead of a sketch show. And that was it, really.
And I think as well, it was that time when we both sat there and went, like, we love the comedy and stuff, although you can get, if you're doing the circuit and you're on it, and it can get a little tedious. But I think we kind of went, but what do we love? We've always loved theatre. And so we kind of went back to that, I guess. Yeah. We just went, no, we will actually, let's do a play. Let's do an actual play.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of when it.
So how does, you're looking, obviously, we were talking last week, and I know you're in a kind of period of reflection about the work and where it goes next. But to go from a place of being mates and doing some sketches and writing a play, you've performed across, you've performed across the UK. You've gone to Edinburgh Festival several times. You've been at Latitude. You've got 2 plays that are published. Pram Kicker has performed across the world. So how do you get from 2 mates going, let's do some work together and some sketches in the play, to actually achieving all of that stuff? What happened? Because I'm always interested in how, you know, because often the question always is, how do you get stuff, you know, up and running off the ground? How did that happen for you?
In terms of the actual practicalities of where we started.
Well, I suppose, where did you get the support? Where did you get the finances from? How did you support yourselves?
So we started by Metal came to us, and they knew we'd done I think by then 1 or 2 plays. Will
you just explain what Metal is, just in case people don't know?
Yes, Metal is a Southend, Peterborough and Liverpool based arts organisation that was started by Jude Kelly, formerly of South Bank Centre and now Women of the World Festival. She wanted to, anyway, they're an arts organisation, and they support artists usually in areas of low cultural engagement, and it's part of their remit to basically nurture artists, give them time and space to work, and make them aware of things that they should be aware of. So in our case, it was by asking us to curate a theatre tent for Village Green Festival, which we did, and they just basically said, you will need Arts Council funding in order to do this, and told us to write an application, which they helped us with quite a lot. And
which we didn't know we could do.
No idea.
Arts Council to us were like, I don't know what that is really, even at that stage. So for them to say that, and then suddenly the kind of doors went, oh, you can actually ask for money.
Yeah.
And they helped you with the application. And just how did they come to you? How did they know about you?
We went to them, I think.
Oh, right.
I think because we kind of knew them, and we would just said, could we just kind of pick your brains? To Sean, didn't we?
Yeah.
We just pick brains, and he was like, yeah. And then they kind of came in with this whole thing that Sadie's just said about this curating, and then helping us. And I think for them, because they're quite known as visual arts, I think having a bit of a theatre arm was actually beneficial for them too.
Yeah.
And then obviously you've had tours of the work, and you've had research and development periods of work. So your process, you've been supported in the making of the work, and so you've gone to Edinburgh Festival and finance. How have you managed to sustain the growth of the company?
We've been lucky a lot of the way through all of it. I mean, obviously it started with the support we got from Metal. We then, the next year, got onto the Escalator East at Edinburgh programme, which was run by Anthony Roberts at Colchester Arts Centre, who is brilliant. And then we went, so we got funding from the Arts Council for these sorts of 2 projects. So we became aware that Arts Council was an option. You just had to work your tits off for it and just hope you got lucky with it.
Yeah.
And then we went through a period of doing Kickstarter. I think we did 2 Kickstarters, which we were lucky with. So we did a lot of that, and we did a lot of, kind of gigs above pubs and saving our pennies and all that sort of stuff. And then after we'd done a bit of that, you strolled into our life, Doug. So we have been really lucky to have lots of really brilliant mentors who have given us kicks along the way and just made us aware of things that we could and should be doing.
I'm just aware of the time, and I want to make sure that people get a chance to ask some questions as well. But I'd love to, just think about your Essex identity and how it, whatever that is, how does that manifest itself in the work, if it does at all?
I don't think it did.
It didn't at all.
It didn't. And I think at that point, if I'm honest, if you'd ask, like if you're out somewhere and people say, where are you from? You're probably going to go, oh, it's near London.
Yeah. And
so I think that the Essex, certainly, I mean, we're Southend based, but the Essexness was probably denied, because if you're from Essex, especially as a girl, we all know that reputation. So you just don't say it.
Yeah.
So I've changed now, proud.
But would you say, is it not in the work at all, in that period of denial?
That's the outsider shit, isn't it? Probably seeping through.
What was that, darling?
Does it not manifest itself? Does your identity not manifest itself in the early period of denial? Is it not in the language? Is it not in the characters? Is it?
I think it is, but I think.
I mean, it's just a question. I wonder.
I don't know. I think that the first two plays had so many characters in, you couldn't pick many of them out as you know, this is clearly an Essex voiced play or whatever. I don't know. It's a bit of a strange one. There were so many characters in it, weren't there? Which I think there's 27 in the first one, and so there was a lot of multi-rolling. So from that regard, we were never focused on having one identity or a voice that we were exploring in that way.
And what about you say, but now it's different? You say now it's different. Why is that different? How is it different?
I think people like you making us kind of aware that not only is your identity something that is part of your work and should be explored more and, you know, attributed where necessary, but also why not fucking own it? Like, you know, why are you shying away from saying that you're an Essex female? You know, if you're going to change the stereotype, you kind of have to be vocal. I don't think we'd ever really wanted to step out and say that, actually.
And what about class? Is there anything about class within your work or your backgrounds? Do they manifest themselves in the work?
I mean, again, with the earlier plays, there's so many characters that they're all from different walks of life. But I think as we have built the company and we've realised what a struggle it is to run your own company and keep in the game and find the money and keep hungry and whatever, I think obviously it's made us very aware of our own working class roots and that we're not privileged, that we don't have a backup, that we don't have pots of money and family to fall back on. So everything we've created has been as two women with not a lot of money, but just a fuckload of hunger to do it. Yeah. So in that regard, it's something that is it's a gathering awareness, I think, the class thing.
And I think it just like Sadie's just said, really is that I think that kind of background keeps you going and keeps you actually pretty kind of sassy when it comes to stuff, because you're hungry, and so you keep going, and you don't have that thing of going, oh well, I know somebody else can pay for it, it's fine. So yeah, that hunger has come probably from that kind of upbringing that we.
Yeah, and also we've never paid ourselves. You know, whenever we've kind of gone for funding, obviously we put in our Arts Council, you know, applications that we do expect to have a fee, but we keep it in the pot for the productions because we almost feel like we don't deserve to be paid because we love doing it so much. And it's only now, you know, and I'm nearly 40, Mayhew's a bit older.
Way older than that.
But it's only now we're just thinking, hang the fuck on, we deserve to eat. you know, and I've got a kid now, so I'm thinking, well, I can't just fucking dick around anymore.
I think it's an extraordinary thing, and it's a common experience, because actually the Arts Council would expect you to be paying.
Oh God, yeah.
I know.
I mean, you wouldn't get funded if you weren't paying for yourself.
So we are paying ourselves. We just choose to keep it in the bank of old trunk.
I know, I'm going to unmute everybody. I think maybe I've unmuted you. Say hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. So many of you. It starts at soon 20. It's going to get 20. We've got nearly 40 people here. So please do. We're going to do this thing where obviously I'm just going to keep it open, and if you speak, the screen, if you want to change your screen to speaker view, then obviously we can follow the conversation. I would just say let's not try and speak over each other and leave lots of lovely gaps between who speaks, so that we can follow this. But somebody's got some music on in the background. Who's got? Is that Ollie? Is that you? Have you got groovy music going on in the background?
No, I'm all good.
I thought you were switching off the music. So are there any? And this is the beginning of a conversation, because we will meet again a number of times. But is there? How many people managed to read some of the work? I'm just interested if people had the time, and don't worry if you didn't. Just give me a wave if you managed to read some of the work, just so I can give a context. Oh yeah, great. Yeah. Don't worry if you didn't. I'm on the other window now looking, so I can't tell you who's on the other window. So can you wave to me if you managed to read?
I don't know about what window.
I know. Just wave again if you. And then I know. Great, I know it's good. There's a good bet. Do if you haven't, do have a read actually, because it will put some of this into context. Will you? Any questions?
I've posted some questions in the chat, but
oh goodness, chat! You've been using the chat.
Sorry.
This is so I can see. Go and ask them. Ask them, Adenika.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So I just want to find out, just in terms of how do you tackle difficult topics within your plays, and are you mindful of the audience? Do you have to be respectful, or do you just speak your mind and speak the truth through the characters?
Why can't he? Sorry, that was.
Who's heard that?
That was slightly weird for me. What I heard something towards the end.
When we're in fact it's on the chat. Can you see that?
Yes, Sarah, you read you.
So how we tackle difficult topics in our play, and do we think about the audience, have to be respectful, or just speak the truth through the characters? I think we speak the truth from that point of view. We are mindful of the audience though.
Yeah, I think we go through a phase in the redraft and in the first few performances of it, where we kind of go through with a, do we need all the bad language that's in there? Because I just write freely. I don't write bad language to shock. I just write those characters and how they would speak. But then I'm very aware that a lot of audiences sometimes think, is that a bit gratuitous? Is that deliberately in there to shock? No, it's not. But I wouldn't want people to watch it and feel alienated by the language. So I do then go through and kind of weed out stuff that might be a bit too much.
You did have somebody walk out, didn't you, around the rape scene?
Yep. Yeah, and also it's that
I think she was triggered because she came back at the end.
That has happened a couple of times. So we're very aware, but then you want to make the work. I know some people put trigger warnings up. We haven't done that because then it's sort of, it's really tricky. It's a discussion we have all the time. With Pram Kicker, we didn't put any warnings up.
And we don't put things about the themes in the copy either. So if there is something in the story that kind of happens, we don't usually make any reference to it. And I do worry about that sometimes.
But it sounds like because you worry about it, and you said that you're thinking about the audience that you're you're writing a sensitivity and a truth.
And every time we revisit as well, some of the language has been changed. As times change, we change some of the language possibly that's in there. So that kind of is an ongoing thing as well. So yeah, we are mindful.
Yeah.
And I guess that's why it kind of, because we do discuss it a lot. Right.
Okay. No, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Go on.
Sorry.
Okay.
I've just got a question sort of similar to that. It's about like being controversial. I did a piece actually at Hornchurch for one of the scratch nights. My piece is about my dad coming out as gay, and I've had some feedback which was really great, but there was one person who said that they worried that it was slightly too controversial, because obviously there's always a fine line with theatre where you want to speak the truth, but you also it's that tipping edge of like, am I being too controversial, but then I want to make sure we have a conversation about it. So in terms of your process, do you just work together in the room and kind of have a discussion with each other about what's maybe too controversial, or are you just in those like first 5 performances seeing, like, testing it out with audiences, or would you say it's important to kind of just keep doing scratch nights and seeing maybe audiences' reactions and stuff?
Yeah. I mean, I think I don't think I ever see stories themselves as controversial. They're stories. It obviously intention. If your intent.
Oh, Sadie, I think we lost you there.
Controversial, then that's you know. Are you doing it for the right reasons? Oh, my internet connection is unstable.
Yeah, you really.
We lost you, but I think we got that. I think we got that, didn't we? That if the intention is controversial, is to
if you want to be controversial, then the chances are you're not going to be controversial. You're just going to be fucking boring. But But I find it weird that someone would say that to you, because what about that storyline is controversial? That's just human. That's a man discovering something about himself and telling his daughter, right?
Yeah. And then it's my reaction to that.
I think that's a good point. I think Sadie's. I think that's really eloquent. It's stories are stories, and I think
So don't worry about it. Just speak.
No.
Write your story.
No, don't worry about it. But I think definitely in terms of scratch and early performance, that's really valuable to make you think about, how am I telling this?
Yeah.
And am I telling it in the most articulate, powerful, thought-provoking, whatever you want to go for?
Yeah.
Am I telling it in the way that I really want to be telling it?
Yeah.
And obviously there are some things in theatre that would fall on the more shocking side of things.
Yeah.
But I don't think a story should be controversial.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, in Fran and Lenny, we had a moment, and I just think it was a little wobble, that the 2 characters are quite angry, and there's a really big rant, quite anti-male, well, very anti-male actually, and very punk. And I think that in really first 3 or 4 performances in Edinburgh, we felt that we were losing audience. That audience were just coming away and going, too much. So we had a little experiment, and we redirected it, and when we did it, and it felt like shit, and it felt not true to the piece. So we put the anger back in, because that was true to what we wanted, and had to go, no, if we're losing the audience, then we're losing them for a reason. And that's fine.
Cool. And that's sometimes just because people don't like to hear ladies shout.
Yes.
But, you know, they can go and see a nice fucking period piece or something, can't they?
Yeah.
Are there other questions?
I have a question. Good evening, everyone. Hello.
Oh, yeah.
Ladies, it's probably a really stupid question.
There's no stupid question.
No stupid question.
No, that's true. That you work really closely with one another. Do you ever just not get on? Do you ever just not agree on where to go next? Like, your careers are kind of intertwined, not just, you know, do you ever just, even as simply as, I've got my agents called and they want me to do this other thing and I need to put this thing that we're doing on pause. Like, how do you handle that?
We haven't, I suppose we've probably been quite lucky in terms of timing thus far. Nothing has really come up where, you know, Sarah hasn't had any acting work that has made we've had to make sure we've had to change our touring schedule or something.
I book it out though, so that it becomes like not a thing, because yeah, it's booked out. It's a job, so it's booked out. So that's not a thing. But
I think the biggest thing has been writing Stiletto Beach last year, but because that came off the back of having a baby, for me that was just an insanely different sort of year anyway, because we were thinking about ideas for Old Trunk, but we hadn't tackled any. So there has been a slight delay in producing our next bit of work.
And how was that for you, Sarah? Because it's a really great question. How was it for you, Sarah, because obviously you've worked so closely for so long, having Sadie write for us?
Weird. Is it Clara, isn't it? I don't think we've ever fallen out. We might have had a bit of like moment, but never ever fallen out, because you always go and get a beer or sit outside and have a fag or whatever it is that gets you through. So no, I don't think we've ever gone, that's it, it's over, I'm stalking out, that's it, end. So and that I think comes across as well, because the relationship is strong and the relationship comes first, not the work.
Yeah, I think that's what strikes me, because otherwise it couldn't work with the two of you, because, you know, you've worked together for quite a long time now.
Yeah.
And for two very strong females, you know, who have, I'm sure, lovely strong opinions from what I know of you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's quite unusual to have, like, for you to both to work so well together. And, you know, I'm sure there are crosswords, and you're right, there's pints and fags that sort that out, but, you know, that hats off to you guys to keep that going, because, or even if one's just like, I'm, you know, and with the children's side of things as well, you know, when you do have a shit night with the kids and you haven't got the energy, like, it's really hard to then keep going with stuff.
I think this is like Sadie just said, and that kind of Stiletto Beach question. Sadie had Marcy, and then straight into wrote a frickin' play with a tiny child and all of that. So I wasn't involved in that. So it was a very weird kind of time, but also that we didn't have to, because we weren't making anything. Have it with Marcy, that wasn't an issue because we weren't making anything. I mean, it was an issue for Sadie because she was having to do a whole play, but for us it wasn't so much. But it was very strange experience for me, because I'm so used to working with Sadie that it was like, oh, it's weird, but it's fine, because I mean, I was working, I did quite a lot of other work and bits and bobs. So, you know, it's fine. You kind of do what you need to do to get through. But yeah, and I suppose there is that ache to go, oh, I just want to be back in the room with Sadie, really.
Sure.
I want to be doing this and making this and whatever it is. Yeah. So, but that's taken it's a year really, wasn't it? A chunk of time that took.
Yeah.
And of course, we now have to work differently, because we have to be mindful that, you know, with Marcy, that we can't just go, let's like go into a room for 3 weeks on our own. Amazing. No.
Oh, it's tempting.
Yeah.
Bye, family. I'll get off to Edinburgh for a month.
yeah, like Edinburgh. Like we have had that conversation. How the fuck do we do Edinburgh? Like, how the fuck do you do Edinburgh with a small child?
But it's good, because I feel like next time we're plotting about what we want to do, we will be really good at identifying things that will be good for us, that we definitely really, really, really want to do, and therefore will work at, and the stuff actually that we could kind of drop. you know, we had a sort of regular checklist, as it were, of things that were always in our calendar that we were working towards. And I would imagine now that it would be quite a different thing, you know, how we identify what we want to aim for that year or in the coming years.
Are there any other questions?
Yes, please.
I have one. Oh, I have one. Go ahead. You can go.
Oh,
you're welcome.
Go on, Ed.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So, excuse me, I'm not great at. I got it all in my head, but I struggle getting words out loud. I'm very enthusiastic and passionate about writing from women's points of view, and I loved the script for Stiletto Beach when I saw it last year. It was brilliant, and was inspired by that. I wrote a duologue earlier this year, which got performed. I've also had a stab at sort of writing a sort of a one-woman show. It's very, very early stages yet. But as I was writing it, like you were saying, like when you're writing, you just sort of you go where it takes you. And I wrote something that actually shocked me. So, and I'm very sensitive of like writing from a female point of view and being a male writer. Like, I suppose what I'm trying to ask is like, what should I be mindful of? Because I'm very aware that women have been misrepresented in story and in all mediums for so many years. So as a male writer, what do you think I should be mindful of writing from a female point of view?
Why are you drawn to writing for a female?
Not all the time. Well, I suppose the misrepresentation over years, I get sick of seeing films and plays and stories, and you know, I work at a theatre that shows a lot of old-fashioned plays, and again, like women written years ago, it's just old-fashioned and boring and doesn't represent women today. So I suppose that's what I'd like to achieve in a lot of stuff I write, or at least what I'm looking at the moment.
I mean, it's a weird one because I feel like I want to write a piece for a man as well. So, but I haven't yet, and I don't know whether I ever will. I don't know, but I think there is that thing of, if you're a writer of dialogue and a writer of characters, in theory, if you're a good writer, you should be able to write those people and bring them to life. And you know, obviously whatever your process is as a writer, you will have your quality check as to, does it sound authentic? You know, if you're writing an 80-year-old woman, does she sound real? If you're writing a 20-year-old woman, does she sound real? And I think no one can tell you not to do that, but just make it good. And that's where the pressure comes, because you know, you will have women coming to see it and just thinking, why are you telling us our story? And why are you telling it that way? And then you will get the, have you done it right? So I guess if you're feeling brave, have a bash. but listen to the women that you share it with, and I would recommend sharing it with a lot of women.
That's what I've started to do. Yeah.
That's lovely. You know, in theory, we all need to be writing more as women and being given more platforms as women, but also we need more men being feminists alongside us. So there is nothing to stop you from doing it.
How old is your lady? Is she older? Because let's face it, they're not written for either.
I mean, the one that the sort of thing that I'm working on at the moment is sort of, I haven't really decided an age yet. I haven't really. Yeah, I mean, I have written for older female parts before though, and I do my best not to make them stereotypical. Again, like authenticity is what I'm always searching for whenever I write any character, I suppose.
Cool.
Molly?
Yeah?
You had a question, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. So, you know, when you're writing your plays, do you write for yourself, or do you ever, like, cast other people in them? Or is it always 2 women shows, if that makes sense? Because you kind of answered.
Sorry.
So you kind of answered it a little bit when you said that you haven't written for men, because I was going to ask that point of view as well, to see if you ever kind of incorporate men into your performance. I know you said that you done a show before with the 2 men, you know, and you've done the 4-man show.
It was out in our show before, but we did make him pay female roles as well, just to...
Oh, okay.
Yeah. In terms of writing, I mean, I always have characters in mind for Mayhew, so the roles she's played, I've written specifically for her. I never really fully envisage the characters I'm going to play until a little bit later, so they kind of get grafted in a bit later, and then all other characters are there because they need to be there. I think
it's also just on that one, Pram Kick and Fran and Lenny are both 2-handers, both just us, and that is a logistical thing. It's a finance thing. It's we're in Southend. We can thereby again work our rehearsals, everything around us and around if somebody's got to go and do something or something's happening, or you know, your other job, whatever it is. So it's a logistical thing. A lot of it was because, you know, we can finance it, we can manage it when we've got this. Obviously Stiletto Beach was something else, and that was other characters that Sadie written that we were not in, but it's very easy to handle when it's just us.
It's quite intoxicating feeling that level of control, actually, as when you're running your own company and creating your own roles, then it's fun.
I'm going to say, can we one last question, because I'm aware we've slightly gone over the time. Do feel free to leave if you need to. Can we ask, I'll take one more question, then I'd really love people just to reflect back really on what they've heard and what they think they will take away from Sarah and Sadie sharing their experience. Are there any more questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Hi,
yeah.
Great, Heather, go.
So I saw Stiletto Beach and I thought it was incredible, but I just kind of thought about how I was one of the only sort of 25, like mid-20s kind of person in the audience, and I feel like a lot more people my age needed to see it. So I just wondered if you had any plans to like take it elsewhere in Essex, like the Palace Theatre or Clifftown, and sort of how autobiographical was it, and how did you kind of structure the play?
So in regards to the audience that came to Queen's, we've had conversations with Matthew and Doug that I'm presuming we'll pick up at some point. We all would love to take Stiletto Beach further, but it will be dependent on funding. So it's likely to be, if it ever gets done again, to be produced as an old trunk thing, which means it would be very different. But yeah, I mean, I put a lot of work into that script, and a lot of love, and a lot of real things, and a lot of, you know, I've lived in Southend since I was 6, so there's a lot of semi-autobiographical stuff, if not in the storylines, but definitely in the feelings and
I really got that from like the monologues about like the one near the end about Topshop closing.
Yeah, the high street.
That really hit me. Yeah,
that is the one thing that probably spewed out of me and was exactly how I felt at that time of writing it, because I was living in quite a rough bit of Southend shortly after having my baby, and I just looked around me and just thought, fucking hell, I've never judged this area, but fuck me, it's rough, and do I want to be here with a baby? So I felt like I was making a judgment about my town in a completely different way, and it wasn't a judgment in terms of a snobbery judgment, it was just, where do I want to be? Where do I feel safe? Yeah, and all that stuff about the town crumbling, I still feel very keenly in the homelessness, and yeah. So yeah, it's
Great.
But yeah, we'd love to do it again.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work to just put down, but we'll see.
It's got more than 2 people in it.
I know.
Is there any, I'd love to just what people have, what has impacted people, what will they take away from Sarah and Sadie? I mean, hopefully you're all going to be huge fans of the work and follow the work and read the work as well. If you don't know the work already, really, really, really do. What are people taking away from this session?
It's doable. Oh, sorry, mate. Just quickly, it's doable. You can do it. I mean, I'm obviously Geordie in my voice, but I've lived in Essex for 8 years now, and I love the place. And it's completely different from up north, I think. But it's right what you know, and it's just literally like you can do it, which is nice to, you know. I mean, I'm an actress completely, but you've got to go in with the writing, I think, as well. Or I felt I had to go in with the writing just for something else to do, be creative, and even if it doesn't go anywhere, just to write a little bit and, you know, just kind of produce some work that you can maybe put on or maybe not. It was just, it's nice to do. So that's what I'll take away from it, that it's doable, it's manageable. And I've got no kids, I've got no ties, I've got 3 dogs, that's about it. So I can do it. You know what I mean? It's easier for me. So just get the fuck on with it, I think, innit?
Right.
If we were to get pin badges made with probably what is the old trunk mantra, it's probably like, just get the fuck on with it.
You know what I mean? .com, yeah. So yeah, that's
So anything else?
Oh, sorry. I was going to say thanks for saying about metal and all that, the fun things. That's really, really helpful in terms of like knowing where the fresh hell to get any money to act down the right stuff. So that was really helpful.
I think that's a massive tip to everyone that I'm sure you are all aware of, because you're here tonight and you know Doug and the Queens, and they're brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and doing what a lot of people should be doing that have venues. But I think the thing is, just keep talking to people and really look up what your options are as well. You know, Sarah and I still need to go through and do a lot more research in terms of what we would be entitled to go for. So
I would just say on that, because I'm not I should be in rehearsal and I'm not in rehearsal. So I've set aside a few days to do some meetings, where I can do some short meetings all day. So if you haven't responded, and it's for people I haven't met yet, so it was in the email, the first email from Lauren, but she'll send out another one as well. So if you haven't booked in a time for us to have a chat over Zoom,
do it.
Zoom. Do it. Is there any other reflection?
I'm sort of very, very new to this whole industry. I've just qualified at Rosebery for college and just been signed by an agent last week. So it's all
congratulations.
So it's all kind of very, very new to me, and this is like my first meeting with you all. So thank you very much for including me, and it's all been really, really inspirational. And I've just really, really enjoyed listening and absorbing you know, the journey that you two amazing ladies have been through. It's all just really, really very inspiring. So I'm really going to watch you and look forward to seeing more of your stuff.
Thanks. Have fun.
All right, I'm going to round up there. So we do, so let's a round of applause to Sarah and Sadie.
I've only got one hand.
Thank you.
Oh, it's sad because it makes you want to be in the room with people.
No.
We will be in the room with each other at some point, because we'll have a big social event once the theatre is open. Just to say, there will be another session next week, and it's a session about making work using people's words and stories. So some verbatim work. So it's a session with 3 artists. It's Dan Murphy, who made a really fantastic piece called Carry On Jaywick, and Lucy Curtis, who made a project for the Queens, actually, which is called Women's Stories of Ford Dagenham. And then Lauren Bracewell is about Mummy, What Did You Do in the War, which she did made a musical based on people's words and stories at the Queen's Theatre. So that will be that will be the discussion next week. So an email will be going out tomorrow. It's tomorrow, isn't it, Lauren?
Yep.
With all the details. So there's a chance, some meaty stuff to talk about, and a chance to, we're sending you some links to some scripts and also to some video as well if you want to digest the artist's work. Great, thank you so much for giving up your Tuesday evening. I cannot tell you how heartwarming it is to have had 2 whole screens of really, really open, generous, and really, really supportive people. Thank you very much, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. So I'm gonna end the meeting.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.